A work session with one item on it, and that will be to go over the principal search timeline. The other item is the main goal of the evening, which is our budget workshop. However, before we get into that, I do have some follow-up to some of the things that were at public commentary at our board meeting last week that I felt were timely to follow up on rather than waiting a month until our next regular board meeting. So, and normally I speak off the cuff, but I had enough thoughts I actually had to write them down. So I don't usually read off of things, but I am in this case. So at our last meeting during public commentary, someone asked, what is wrong with spring school? And hearing this question from worried parents and new community members was really heartbreaking. And there's nothing wrong with our school that a sense of community and working together can't resolve. There were a number of issues raised, and I'd like to address them, some of them at this time, concerns that were brought to our attention. The main one being the large number of resignations that were referenced a number of times during the meeting. So the number that was tossed about was so high that both myself and the district clerk the next morning decided to look it up independently and see, what they were. And so we each tallied them the next day and compared notes. And then I went ahead and color coded all them because I'm kind of a nerd and I do stuff like that. Just to see, what positions were leaving. So the positions, the number of people leaving the school in the past 5 years, since 2018 through now, there were on the agendas, there were 18 transfer of position resignations. And this is where we have people resign from one position in a school. Sounds like they're leaving, but they're actually taking on another position in the school. This is how you have to move within the school for a promotion or to a different area. Actually, Mrs. Cleary knows this well because she's technically resigned twice from spring school already. When she became assistant principal, she had to resign as a teacher. When she became principal, she had to resign as an assistant principal. So somebody not aware of that could be looking at that and saying, oh, it look like there are more resignations than there are. And there were also people resigning from stipend positions, which is not a job here. It's an additional task that people take on, such as being athletic director or something else. These kind of changes happen, but that is the official way of doing it. So since 2018, there have been 20 retirements, of whom 8 were teachers, 6 were TAs, and 6 were other staff. There have been 53 resignations. 5 of those were tenured teachers, 2 moved out of state, 2 took positions in their home district. There were 20 new teachers who were here in a probationary status and not given tenure. And I'm sorry, there were 18 of those. Two of the new teachers took a job here and then resigned before starting because they did something else. So because I know last week we had a number of new parents here and new community members, I just want to explain how this process works. So when we get a new teacher to the district, often those people are fresh out of school and they're hired on a probationary basis, which is what the law says that happens. The probationary period is for 4 years unless they receive tenure in another district, in which case the probationary period is for 3 years. The probationary period gives the school district the ability to evaluate these teachers to determine whether they will be successful here at Springs. We have the long-term interests of our taxpayers in mind, and we need to be very selective in who we retain as a permanent member of our instructional staff. Additionally to those, there were other resignations, including 5 teaching assistants, 3 of whom moved away, 2 bus drivers who took jobs at other local districts, 8 clerical staff, the majority of whom took jobs at other local districts. We had 2 people leaving from the business office. We had 2 permanent substitutes resign, and then 9 other support staff for various reasons. So I'm spelling this out because I did not want people to think that we had a massive amount of teachers, tenured teachers, leaving this district. We do not. Staff leave for a variety of reasons. And inaccurate information can be very damaging, and that showed during our meeting. People got very concerned hearing this, and the last thing our community needs right now, as we begin to fill important leadership positions, is extra worry. And speaking of inaccuracies, the East Hampton Press had a story out this week that had some things that should be addressed, and they have made steps to correct those already online. One of the claims was that our school cut AP classes. I think everyone here knows that elementary and middle school students do not have AP classes. That's a high school program. And additionally, the reporter misunderstood. Megan Payne spoke and mentioned that the staff learned of the resignations of our two instructional leaders via Parent Square. And the paper came out, we told everybody about Parent Square Monday night. That was a misunderstanding on the part of the reporter. But I will say that what Megan said was true, that our teachers got the news of the resignations at the same time as the parents, instead of a separate email just to staff. And that was correct, and the administration and board feel very badly about how things got rolled out. Things are happening very quickly over the course of that day, and if we could go back in time and handle them differently, we certainly would. It was regrettable, but it was a learning experience for us, and we'll make sure that there are procedures in place that does not happen again. As board members, it can be frustrating to have our hands tied by the open meetings law and other privacy laws in which we are precluded from discussing personnel matters. The board is very aware of what's going on in our school. Ms. Winter has been our educational leader for the past 6 years, and she will be until we look for her replacement next year. She has our full support, and we are very happy with the numerous improvements that have occurred under her watch. We take great pride in the successes of this district, of which there are many. We have our fabulous robotics team just won a very important competition up Island over the weekend. We're really excited. They've been invited to go someplace to a greater championship, and we'll share more about that at our next regular board meeting. Talk was made of programs being cut, but as of this year, we have an all-day pre-K program, first time in our district. This winter went out and wrote a grant for that, which is allowing us to have that and be on par with our local other neighboring district. That's a huge, huge deal for our school. We have grant writing efforts in general that's bringing more opportunity for our kids, written by a number of people in the school, by teachers, by administration. And then, of course, there's our new building, which has happened recently, and we're very appreciative of the advocacy and the community outreach that our superintendent undertook to ensure that members of our community truly understood our needs for our building and how vital their support was for passing our building bond, and we are very grateful for their support. We listened to the frustrations of some parents last week who felt they don't have enough information on school happenings, and we have come up with some plans to address these concerns. Tomorrow's communication committee meeting, we'll be discussing having some extra info on our website, like a getting involved option under parents, to explain different options that are available to them, PTA, when board meetings are, other ways people can participate. And we've also discussed having a monthly letter going out with a list of all the upcoming meetings. It's easy for us who have been here a long time and are used to the way things work to know what to look for and know when things happen. And there are new people here who do need more outreach than what they've been getting. So this is, one of the reasons why we actually created a communications committee this year, so we could have more effective communication with our families. We are very happy that people do want to be involved. I got that feeling from the last meeting, and we would like to let them know that there are options for different levels of involvement, and we welcome construction input, and we're really game for making changes to things when we can. And also at the meeting last week, we had some community members who were concerned about the position of our new storage trailer. And in the week, we had a buildings and ground committee meeting. We were able to walk around, find another place to take care of it, and address that person's concern in a fairly timely manner. So just so people know, we are all community members here, and we all care about what is happening here, your board members. Please know that your school board is focused on helping our staff develop best practices through professional development, on helping our students become their best selves with as many enrichment opportunities as we can afford. We should all be focusing on our educational programs and how we can best help our kids. What happened at the last board meeting is not a productive way to deal with the issues that we are facing collectively. And out of respect for the fact that we are in search for a new administration, let's use this time to focus on positive improvements that will benefit our students and our community. And it's really time to hit the reset button and work together. That's been the spring school motto for a long time. Together we make a difference. And we need to get some more bumper stickers made and remind people of that. But we do honestly appreciate your being here. We do appreciate constructive criticism, and we'll do our best to address those issues. So thank you very much. And at this time, we will go into our first work session topic of our principal search.
Julie, can you post the PowerPoint, please? So this logo, anytime the community sees this logo on Parent Square announcement on the website, it's going to mean that there's an update on the principal search. So this is what I selected. I think Facebook talks about the fact that if you just write something, nobody reads it, but if you put a picture, everybody responds. So that's my plug there. If you see this, it has some sort of communication regarding our principal search. Next slide, please. So this entire page can get a big check mark. I just have to figure out how to do it. Wednesday, the Board of Education and myself met. I shared the job posting for the principal, the timeline, the procedures for interview, and we went over it, we edited it, we discussed it. We had some concerns about doing it as quickly as we are going to do it, but we also need to get out ahead of our colleagues. I shared with the Board of Education, just one of the local administrative organizations, CASE, put out, I think there were 19 administrative positions on Long Island alone. And there were multiples in same districts, very similar to us, to principals, to assistant principals. Yes, larger districts, but still, I wanted you to see. And that's just Long Island. I didn't send you the one that covers the entire state of New York, but it's widespread. On 3/2, we posted the principal position on OLAS. I also sent it to the East End superintendents.
Yeah, can you just say what OLAS is for?
Oh, yes, it's the program that all school district professional and administrators apply for a job. So it casts a wide web. You can go into the system and say what geographic in New York State that you want. You can go in and do it. You can do the search by principal, by assistant principal, teacher, and it keeps everything too. So I can see the last time we posted for a science position. It keeps a nice running log for us, for all the school districts. But I also sent it to the East End superintendents, and I sent it to BOCES. BOCES is your Board of Cooperative Education. They're to provide services to us that we can't do ourselves. That's how we get Ken Marble, is from BOCES, helping us out one day a week. So,
but most anybody that applies has to go through OLAS.
Absolutely.
And that's what people have to understand. That's where you go to get your applicants online, because they have to fill in all the credentials there, and it keeps track of
emails don't work. Mail, it gets too overwhelming. So this is the system now, and everything's there. Not only their resume, their cover letter, their references. Okay, everything gets posted into one spot. An administrator that's looking at the applicants can check off which ones they want to print, or that they want to call for an interview, and that's how the clerical staff can go on to do the actual calling for interviews. We share the timeline and procedures for hiring the principal with the community and with the staff. On Saturday, 3/4, the superintendent and Board of Ed drafted a survey to send to parents, teachers, staff, and students. What do they want to see in the next building principal? That was finalized and went out on Monday. And as of today, just a few minutes ago, there were 191 responses. Our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders were to complete the survey in their social studies classes, and the survey was also translated in Spanish. I literally have 2 responses on the Spanish survey, but I have responses on the English survey in Spanish. So there were individuals that could read the English one, but wrote their responses in Spanish, and those can easily be translated through Google. At the end of this, when this closes by March 17th, the Board of Education right now can see this as they come in. But On March 17th, I will be able to do an Excel spreadsheet, and you'll be able to see all of the comments and all of the responses in that Excel spreadsheet. And then we can talk about what next steps we take from there. But the reason for that was to help formulate some of the interview questions on the interview committees. Next slide, please. So the applications close on March 17th. March 20th, myself and Ken Marlowe will screen the paper candidates to determine basic qualifications are met per the posting. So the posting is on OLAS, and there were criteria that had to be met. And we will do a little checklist to say, does this person have the proper certifications? Does this person have the 5 years that we were looking at as a teacher? Does this person have 3 years as a sitting principal or as an assistant principal? And then that's how we'll vet them to move on from there. On Wednesday, we're going to do virtual candidate screenings. Now, normally, the administration found this really helpful during the pandemic, and especially with our distance. To have people come out here for a 15-minute quick interview seemed like a waste of time. So we really did this virtually, and it really seemed to work, because when you're sending people to committee and people are taking day off from work or they're being away from their classrooms for the day, you want to make sure that the people that you vetted on paper look the same when you meet them for 15 minutes. And that has really, from my perspective, the committee members have appreciated it. You didn't waste your time. Most times you really know if this is somebody you want to continue to have a conversation with after the first 5 minutes. So this vetting of 15 minutes. We will invite 2 board members to sit on that virtual screening, myself, the HR person, and an STA representative. From that 15-minute screening, we hope to get to 5 to 7 candidates for in-person interviews lasting at least an hour each. HR will work with the superintendent and STA to form these 2 committees. Next slide, Julie. A professional committee chaired by HR, teachers, elementary, secondary, special education, special area, mental health staff, CSEA representative, 1 Board of Ed member. Support Community PTA Committee, chaired by a Board of Ed member, current administrative assistant to the principal, maintenance supervisor, custodial, head of the custodial bargaining unit, transportation bargaining unit, the business official, 3 PTA members representing the grades like K to 2, 3 to 5, 6, 7, and 8, and 1 parent of a special needs student and community members. We have already had people reaching out, emailing. I've made a special file for those people and made a special list. So I will review that again with HR and with the Board of Education. Thursday, March 30th, from 8 to 4, committee interviews for principal. Lunch will be provided by the district. And I do this again. Every person who sits on this committee will have to sign a confidentiality. When you provide lunch, it doesn't provide for the individual sitting on committee to go out into the community, have lunch, have coffee break with somebody and start talking about the interview process. So I've learned, again, this is a way of more or less having people eat together, talk informally, and yes, try to keep this as confidential as possible. There are some people that will be applying that haven't told supervisors yet, superintendents yet, and that's my goal, to keep this as confidential as possible until that person is selected. The HR and superintendent will check references. On Friday, 3/31, HR, superintendent, Board of Ed member, STA member, student, PTA member, to invite the final 2 or 3 candidates to walk through with final interviews. This has been really helpful in some districts. Having somebody sit and wait and talk to the greeter or the secretary, you get some information in that process. By walking the building, interacting with students, with staff, asking appropriate questions. What is that? We don't have that in my school. It's an informal kind of get to know you process. I like it. It's time consuming, but I think it will go a long way in getting to sense of how that person interacts with our school community. And then a special meeting to appoint the new principal of spring school. I think it should be special. I don't think it should be rushed at a board, a board meeting with a lot of agenda items. I think it should be a special meeting, a welcome meet and greet, or cake, and have, students and parents present. Questions?
Questions from the board? Okay, we will have public commentary, as I said, on each of the 2 items this evening. So at this time, if anybody has a question or comment about the hiring process, I would ask you to come up to the podium and state your name. Or if anybody's calling in from on LTV at this time.
We have 0 callers at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we will move ahead on to our budget workshop.
We have our little logo going over there.
Nice interactive, yes.
Yeah, I can't take the credit, that's Hannah. It's very creative. Next slide. But I couldn't get the S in the next slide, so we have a little glitch there. But again, our mission statement, I think it's important to read it tonight. Spring School is committed to providing a safe environment and enriched educational experience for our students, and with an emphasis on academics, physical, social, and emotional growth. We will prepare our students to be lifelong learners, to respect cultural diversity, to embody positive character traits, and be responsible, caring citizens. Goals again for 23-24. We will be having a meeting in May to indicate our progress on these goals and maybe come up with some new objectives. But for now, this is what we're proposing for next year. Goal 1, increase social, emotional, behavioral, mental, and physical health opportunities for students and staff. Goal 2, improve governance and communication. Goal 3, engage in strategic planning for fiscal responsibilities and facilities. Goal 4, bring student achievement back to pre-COVID levels. What we want to maintain: a robust pre-K to 8 educational program that meets New York State mandates. Small class sizes in K-5 not to exceed 25 students. Staffing that supports New York State mandates and requirements. A commitment to instructional technology, including personnel. Extracurricular programs, sports, band, chorus, opera, robotics. School safety. Adequate custodial and maintenance staff. Fully staffed bus drivers and bus monitors. Permanent substitute teachers and teaching assistants. Quality professional development and ongoing curriculum work. Comprehensive social emotional programs and restorative supports. This is our enrollment and class size as of a week ago. Just today alone, this past week, which is only 2 days, we've had 10 students enroll in our school.
Like this week, since
This
yesterday?
week,
Since
enroll.
yesterday.
Yes.
Grade levels.
Yeah.
Well,
They're in our building.
so what grade levels? Is it all one grade levels or multiple?
2nd, 4th, and 7th.
And what about high school? I mean, that, or, no.
I signed off on another one for high school, so they're not reflected here. Okay? So when we look at this, remember that pre-K right now is at 51 students. We've located 1 student in a Head Start program. I don't think there's more out there, okay? So if you roll the 54 students up to kindergarten, I'm recommending 3 sections. And remember, kindergarten has a full-time TA. If you were to change that and decide to go with 4 sections, we would go from 18 to 13.5. Grade 1, so the kindergarten rolling up is at 3 sections now. I'm recommending to keep it at 3 sections. The class will be a little bit bigger than kindergarten, 20, maybe 21 students plus a TA. If you went to 4 sections in first grade, it would be 15 students to a class. keep the second grade to 4 sections. Again, it's at 67 students. That could go either way. Right now, I'm saying 4 sections, but I have a question mark there. If it goes lower, you might be able to reduce that, but if one of the other ones go higher, you might shift the teacher to the other one. But right now, at 4 sections, it's 16.75. In 3rd grade, you have the largest section, that's 81 students for next year. 4 sections definitely, with 20 students in the classroom. 4th grade, 74 students, 4 sections to a class, 4 sections to that grade, 18.5 students to a class. 5th grade is another one of those question marks in my books. If you remember the testing the data that we got from testing, 5th grade seems to be a little area of going down. Right now, I have it slated for 3 sections. That could easily go to 4 sections depending on enrollment, because it's right there at 67. With 3 sections, 22 to a class. If you went to 4 sections, it would be 16.75 to a class. Okay. 7th grade is definitely three sections. It's 54 students, 18 to a class. 8th grade is the other one that we've got a question mark with. We were talking about 11 sections for 6, 7, and 8. Mr. Odom is working on the scheduling. Tonight we have some of the staffing implications of that, but I'm also worried about that enrollment. If that comes down, do we really need to go to 11 sections? We have a 10-section schedule, so that's not an issue. We didn't have an 11-section schedule, so that's what I want Mr. Odom to work on. So just in case our enrollment does climb, that we stay with this these 11 sections versus 10 sections. If that went to 3 sections, that's where your numbers are right on the cusp. That's the 24 something. And that's why I'm recommending the 4 sections at this time, because it is so close to that 25, and that is your goal, to stay under 25. So you can see this is already outdated, and you want everything the Thursday before our board meeting. So that's the last time this was edited. It was Thursday. It goes live on Sunday for the public. So it's outdated. Okay, I just want to make that perfectly clear. As of today, it's outdated. Ms. Cleary?
Sure.
This is closer for you?
Okay, so this is a bit of a strange looking slide, but I'll just walk you through it. So the boxes represent the different grade levels. Obviously, they're marked, and then the number of sections at each grade level based on what Ms. Winter just explained. So kindergarten, we're looking at 3 sections. The information that's in blue represents a co-taught section. That's where you have 1 general ed teacher and 1 special ed teacher in that class. I believe Dr. Turnow, in her presentation last week, she did explain that we would like to go back to the co-taught model K through 5 instead of the consult model that we tried out this year. We think it's more beneficial for the kids. So in kindergarten, you'd have 3 sections. 1 of those classes would be co-taught, and then of course they all have TAs, and then you would have the 1 special ed teacher in that class. Okay, same grade 1 is the same, 3 sections. 1 would be co-taught, 1 class, and they also have TAs.
Explain the number in parentheses next to the other number of
Oh,
students.
I'm sorry. So the number on the bottom of each box, so in kindergarten, 54 is the number of students. That's the enrollment. Okay. And right now, currently, the number in parentheses is how many classified students we predict will be in that grade next year based on the information we have right now. So while 2 is a small number, we don't know yet. Kindergarten's always a wild card with who we're getting and what their needs may be. So if you look, we would know more like grade 1, you see there's 61 students, 3 sections. 1 of those classes would be a co-taught class. And then you have 3 classified students that are currently classified in kindergarten going up to grade 1 next year. Grade 2, you have 68 students, 9 of which are classified. And you have 4 sections at grade 2 and 1 co-taught section. Grade 3, 4 sections, 81 students, 8 classified students going into grade 3 next year. Grade 4 sections.
Christina, I hate to interrupt, but
Yeah, sure.
so what's your max in one co-teaching class?
Well,
10.
It depends because there's a ratio. It should be no more than 60, 40, 40, 60, right?
So that
Yeah,
you're looking at a classroom size of about 20 students.
Yes.
In the third grade. So one of those classrooms would have 8 identified students.
correct. And 2 teachers,
Two
one
teachers.
special ed teacher and
And
one
one-
general ed teacher, correct.
And when Miss Cleary says special ed,
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's really,
It sounded like Tim had a good comment. You just can't hear back here.
I'm just again, we're asking clarification here at the board, so I'm sorry you can't hear, but I'll try to do a better job of turning around. My question was just the ratio of special ed students in one classroom. Again, when you have 8, that's not spread over 2 classrooms, it's just in one classroom. If you have more than 8, then you have to look at having 2 classrooms.
Correct.
depending on the number of gen ed children in the classroom. And when Ms. Cleary says special ed, these are the co-taught special ed students. You can have a speech impaired kid or a child who gets just OT or counseling services in the other
Right.
sections.
Right.
It wouldn't be in this section. This is just the co-taught section.
Okay,
Thank
and then,
you.
sure. And then grade 4, similarly, there's currently 8 classified students going into next year's grade 4, 72 students altogether, and 4 sections, and one of those classes being co-taught. 5th grade, we currently have 3 sections at 4th grade this year. That's why it rolls up to 5th grade as 3 sections, 1 co-taught class. Within those 3 sections, there's 67 kids going into grade 5 next year, and 6 out of the 67 are classified students. Okay, and then here, the blue is middle school, obviously, so grade 6, we have 4 sections because we have 77 students going into next year's grade 6. 10 students are classified currently, and out of the 4 sections, one of those sections would be a co-taught class, in that the special ed teacher basically follows those classified students, and the students that they're with in the different classes follows them throughout the day. Grade 7 would be 3 sections. We have 58 or 56, I can't see that, 56, sorry, with 5 classified students, so that would be 3 sections and 1 special ed teacher floating throughout the day. And then 8th grade, right now, as Ms. Winter noted, we are currently trying to make it work where we have 4 sections in 8th grade, 73 students, 11 classified students, and there would be 2 special ed teachers dedicated to the 8th grade classified students. The green boxes represent our self-contained special education classes, okay? So our K through 2 class, we have 1 teacher currently, and that would be the same for next year, 1 teacher and 4 dedicated teaching assistants or one-to-one aides for the classified students in that class. There's currently 5 students going into K through 2 that we know of currently for next year. We may get others. 3 through 5 special ed self-contained is 1 teacher and 1 TA for 3 students. Life skills, that's currently Ms. Pantol's class, 1 teacher and 2 TAs, and there's 2 classified students in that class. And then this is currently Ms. Tapia's class, self-contained 6 through 8 students, and they have 1 teacher and 1 TA that works with 8 classified students who vary, like I said, in grade level from 6 to 8. Are there any questions about?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just could go back to
Sure.
that for a second. So looking at this, it looks like there are 2 grade levels that are going to be closely on the line depending on
Yeah.
enrollment, which is 1st
Yes,
and 5th grade. So again, that might be something we may want to consider as we're planning possibilities for that.
correct, yes.
Special ed numbers look really good, except for that, those 8 in 3rd grade and 4th grade possibly. And again, as far as 8th grade goes, it sounds like you're already thinking about 2 special ed teachers there anyway.
And we're watching it very closely. We're watching the numbers very, very closely. Oh, next slide, sorry.
Staffing request, for 23-24 school year. Currently, we have a .6 Spanish teacher. We would like to recommend an additional .4 Spanish teacher, K-5, for a full-time FTE. So the net to next year's budget is only a .4. We already have a .6, but this person does not have to be Spanish certified. It can be an elementary certified teacher. We have somebody in that position right now. And we think
Would you explain FTE so people know?
at full-time equivalents. So right now, it's a .6. So the net for next year's budget, the .6 is in this year's budget. So when we ask Mike to tell you what the increases are for next year, these are the increases, okay? .4 additional counselor. We're very fortunate, our new business teacher that we hired, who also is a .6, is a certified counselor. The research has shown that mental health issues are on the rise. She's got a vision to bring back our greenhouse and use it as a therapeutic environment, especially for our older students. She's connected with them. She really has a handle on some of the issues that they're facing. And I did a little bit of research. East Mauritius has 296 students to one counselor. We have one counselor to 700 students. South Holt has 400 counselors to one student. Their middle school in South Holt has 140 students to one counselor. Sag Harbor, 500 students, 3 counselors K to 12. And Hampton Bays, 5 to 8 only, 598 students to 2 counselors. So you can see that even though we have a social worker and we have 2 psychologists, counseling is required on the elementary level as well as secondary. It's not just help the student get into college, but it's a lot of those other academic and social issues that our students are dealing with. And I believe this can be grant funded on IDEA. So even though I put it here, it will not hit the general fund. I am certain that in today's climate, we would get this approved on the IDEA funding, which is the Special Ed, Individual with Disabilities Education Act, to fund this program. 2 special ed teachers for the return to the consultant teacher. They are currently not in our budget. It wasn't like we kept them there for a placeholder or anything. We can go back to last year's budget and show you all the cuts we made to come in at the cap. Okay? This year, Mike's job will be to show you all the additions we want to make. Okay? There are no cuts in this budget. There are just additions. .2 science. We currently have a .2 science. If you go to the 11 sections, you will need another .2 science. You already have a .2 Spanish teacher. That would have to remain with the 11 sections. The other 2 sections you will have to add, which again I think could be grant funded, is you would need an ELA lab and a math lab, because that's current and you don't want to get rid of that. That's what helps our students, in addition to the MTSS support in math and ELA, are these periods. When you go to 11 periods, those teachers will not have room in their schedules. So you will need another, at least .2 for ELA, another .2 for math, and I believe our Title I funding again would support that, because the research is showing that small group instruction for tutoring is very helpful to all students.
So again, you're saying if we go to the 11 sections, we would need those additions.
Correct. And again, I was concerned about mixing the grant and the budget for you. So I can redo the slide if you like and just add those 2 and say that they're grant funded. But I think I'd rather put the grant funding someplace else and know what Mike has to put into the general fund for you, because that's your plus. And that's what the additions are going to be to the general fund.
So just to be clear, that .2 science position would be available to current staff members.
Excuse me?
That .2 science
Yeah.
position would be, so if you have these small FTEs percentages, you can't give them to staff members who don't have a full load or can teach an additional period.
Correct.
Contract allows for that.
Yes, and it's in their contract. I forget what the amount is, but that was
There's a cap to it.
Yes, there was a cap to it. You're not going to find teachers for .2. You
Right.
might be able,
Well, it makes sense to give it to a current teacher because then you don't have to pay for the benefits. all.
Certified, is that correct?
yes, and they have to be certified in the content area.
Exactly.
Currently, you already have a contingent position in the budget. Okay, we did that this year. I am recommending that we put a second contingent position in the budget. You saw that, Tim?
Yeah.
The other spot that I'm worried about is the special ed in 6th grade. You could need another co-teacher there, depending on that numbers. So that's what I'm recommending. So you would have 2 contingent gen ed / special ed positions in the budget, for a total FTE of 4. With benefits, that comes out to about $360,000. Mike will run the exact numbers for you. And we'll keep a very close eye on enrollment. As I said, I was shocked this week. And usually I check in on Friday to see what the enrollment is, but I heard over the radio, bring a desk too. I was like, that's the second request for a desk this morning. What's going on? And that's when I learned that there were 10 students.
So Deb, just, you mentioned some earlier, but, when Mike's working on is all the wants we need, all the needs, all the wants, right? Oh, we're gonna do up, and then we're gonna see what comes out at the end.
Mike is, the end of this budget presentation, Mike is recommending another budget meeting, okay? At that budget meeting, he will give you a summary of all of these presentations of the wants with dollar amounts to it.
Right.
Before he can give you your tax base or your tax levy, the Board of Education needs to tell us yes, no, yes, no.
Right.
And then he will be able to tell you exactly what the increase is going to be to the taxpayers and what that will cost each taxpayer based on what their house is worth.
Right.
Okay, he's always done that for you, and he will do that. He needs one more meeting before he can do that. Okay?
Of the wants, and then,
We're talking about needs.
no, we're talking about needs, needs, yes, needs, right? Yeah, needs we need, and then, till we want to set out the budget.
And then the last slide shows our meeting dates and the meeting
Yes.
dates that I am suggesting. This is interesting in that we collect enrollment that we give to the state for state aid on October 6th, is it? October 5th? And yet I'm doing a report for UPK based on enrollment on March 15th. Like, no reason or why. But what we're very diligent at is that Beds Day is around the 21-day mark, depending on the Jewish holidays. After 21 days, you can drop a student. I always recommend that we are on the side of not overstating our enrollment because our state aid is based on that. I'd rather be under it than have them cut our state aid down the road because we overestimated the number of students in the district. I also want you to take note that this is 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. It's just a slight decrease in our enrollment for special education. From 121, 116 last year to 119 is what we're projecting for the 23, 24 school year. K-8 is in our district. The high school, other high school, we have 2 at Southampton. BOCES is your Board of Cooperative Education. They go to West Hampton, or to, there's another one in Holtzville, Sequoia, I believe it is. And then we have one in residential. Next slide, Julie. This is our proposed special education budget. The last column is the dollar difference from what was budgeted in 22-23 and what's proposed. You have a decrease in contractual expenses. That's where we pay for an occupational therapist for any overages that our own in-house person can't do. Physical therapy, if we need any kind of speech evaluations that we can't get through BOCES. even outside psychiatric evaluations that we can't do through BOCES. That's where we contracted expense. We do have a reading teacher in there as well that we contract with.
So the two teachers that you're proposing are not included in part of this budget?
No,
No.
personnel will be totally separate. That
Gotcha.
will be the next board meeting where Mike tells you what personnel is going to cost this district with
Okay.
the increases contractually. So he rolls everything, doesn't roll things over, but he puts in the new contractual salary and benefits. That's not in any of this. Materials and supplies, looking at a slight increase there. Textbooks, we stay pretty consistent because we can get state aid on that. The tuition for the residential student is in there. Suffolk County flow through we took out because that's all grant supported. It shouldn't be in the general fund to begin with. We get money from the state in our special ed grants, and then we give it back to the providers of special ed programs for our pre-K students and any student who is kindergarten age that might be in an alternative program, such as Alternatives for Children or Just Kids. So it's all flow through money. Tuition for special ed students, this is your students at the high school. The special ed numbers we projected last year, Tim, you said it, helped balance the general ed numbers. In good conscience, I can't keep that amount of money in there, knowing that I don't have that number of special ed students. So I'm taking a little bit of a risk here and taking off about 182,625, which is just really a couple of hybrid kids, because you have 9 self-contained kids between Southampton and East Hampton. I'm leaving only one self-contained child for high school at in the $60,000 range for tuition. The hybrid, I'm leaving a little bit more of a cushion, about 2 students there. So I'm making the recommendation. I just can't in good conscience leave the numbers that were there before. Those numbers helped us balance the general fund right now. BOCES tuition, 3 students there. That's a slight increase. BOCES is raising their rates about 3%. And other BOCES services that we may contract for, again, 2% increase there. So in that column, you have a negative of $161,986 for special ed. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Cleary for the
Okay.
instructional proposed budget.
Okay, so I'll take you through this and then I'll just give you a sort of a synopsis of the additions and then one place where we're able to save a little bit. So in curriculum and supervision, and this is pretty much, this is a lot of different things. It's supervisory, it's contractual, it's supplies, it's conferences, it's things like that. 21, 22, we didn't go to a lot of conferences. A lot of things were still virtual because of the pandemic the previous year. And so the actual, and then was 41. We budgeted 70,000 for this year, and I'm proposing 78 for next year because we really wanted to make professional development a priority for next year to really catch up and make up for lost time and also, keep our teachers on the cutting edge. As far as research, planning, and evaluation, that is contractual, and training, that pretty much stayed consistent from 21, 22 through next year. Teaching, this is equipment, contractual supplies, textbooks, materials for the classrooms, things like that. We budgeted 279 last year, and we are proposing 387, and that is a large jump because we've included the new math curriculum. Yes, so that was actually a jump of $136,000. That's what it costs today for a complete math curriculum, K through 8. Even if we don't go with a new company, we still have to revamp our materials from Go Math, which is our current program, because everything every couple of years gets updated, and they include new features and new technology, and everything's aligned to next generation standards. So that's where you see the large jump in that third column. And we were able to balance that a little bit with taking out a little bit of equipment. Last year, we had to spend a little bit more on kitting out our new science lab in 8th grade, our new technology lab, and also beefing up our 7th grade science room. So that was spent the year before, so now next year we don't have that expense. For tuition, this is the big one. You can see, there's a dollar difference there, and that there's not a lot we can really do about that. Those numbers are pretty much set for us. These are based on the numbers we have today. There's an increase of $643,000 there. And if you just go to the next slide, please. For library, they have their own codes for conferences, materials, supplies, the virtual, the collection, the virtual collection, the loan program through BOCES and BOCES services. That just increased slightly from what was budgeted last year because everything's going up in price. All the services we pay for BOCES and through our the library services have increased. And as we get more students and we try to upgrade our textbooks and our virtual collection, that goes up in price. So we have a $2,000 difference. Bless you. Next column is computer assisted instruction. Now, this is interesting. We were able to streamline a lot of the purchases we made during COVID when everything was virtual and everybody was trying out new platforms. And John Gibbons and I were able to sit down with the help of the teachers and really look at what is still being used from 2021 and 21-22. And we were able to take out quite a few software programs that really we weren't using anymore. A lot of times during COVID, the companies would give you free samples of things, people would love it and use it, and then they would increase, they would then charge you the following year. So we really had to be quite intentional about what we used in software programs. Okay. So that's why you see a little bit of a decrease there. For co-curricular activities, contractual materials and supplies, this is your opera, this is your middle school play, things like that. That pretty much stayed the same as far as what's being proposed for next year. Again, we want to prioritize the creative arts and music and chorus and all those great programs. So that pretty much stays the same with a dollar difference of $161. Interscholastic activities, these are basically your sports. And sports are not cheap these days, but they are, definitely something our kids benefit from tremendously. So we proposed $64,740 for next year. Some of those are fees for services. Some of them are material, uniforms and equipment and all of that stuff, and money paid to the organizations. And that's a dollar difference of $1,172. So you see that there's actually a subtotal decrease, which helps us out a little bit. And then the dollar difference is $753,345 for instructional. And, instructional is really the meat and potatoes. There are a lot of line items in the instruction budget. Not salaries, but definitely pretty much everything else, from supplies to curriculum to, everything under the sun, memberships. That's pretty much the catch-all. And then, of course, the East Hampton High School tuition.
East Hampton High School tuition is
That's the big nut.
That's the big nut,
$43,346
That's what makes up.
of that $750.
Right. So we really do operate on a very, I don't want to call it a shoestring budget, but we are very frugal and we are very careful how we spend, and we are very intentional that the money really truly goes to the kids and to the benefit of the students. And I'm proud to say that. And I think that's a collaborative effort on everybody's part, because we're not a resource-rich district. But that high school tuition, and again, we would get 30 new students that we weren't expecting this year. And so that is a big nut.
General education, and it was the
Yeah.
special ed funding
Yeah.
that supported that.
Wait, that was at the high school?
Yeah,
How
our,
many new students altogether did we have at the high school?
right now you have 370 students.
And what was the increase?
Right.
So-
27,
27.
28, yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
almost 30 new
And so we
students
allowed
that we
for,
did
we allowed
not.
for 7, and we got 20 more than what we allowed for.
Yes, correct.
Your total for special ed and general ed for the high school tuition for next year is $10,833,590. A third of your budget.
So just quickly, for the instructional budget, I just wanted to give you the quick rundown of where some of the bigger increases were, and it might have balanced out, but we added some budget for greenhouse because our new business teacher, we went from facts to business, and she's going to use the greenhouse in many capacities and as an outside learning environment. So that was a little bit of an increase for supplies and materials of about 10,000. We had to rent a new stage for the 8th grade graduation, a stage that's ADA compliant because we do have a graduate this year that happens to be in a wheelchair. So that was a cost of $8,000. And our math curriculum, which I explained already, and then, of course, tuition. And we saved a little bit on equipment and supplies for some of the new labs and other spaces that we upgraded during the construction project. Anybody questions?
I remember at an earlier meeting talking about the money we'd be saving because that we could pull out of the budget from, things that we'd already done to
Yeah.
the science class and and that just gets eaten up
It
somewhere
gets eaten
else,
up pretty
right?
quickly, yep.
Oh my gosh, yeah, okay.
Next slide, Julie. So here's a breakdown of the East Hampton tuition. These are, real numbers based on our bills. That's exactly where we pulled it off of. So October, 331 students in the gen ed at $24,595.62. Self-contained, 6 students, $68,269.63. Inclusion students, that's sometimes referred to as the hybrid, is $36,250.47. There's 25 students for a total in October of 362. By February, we're up to 370, mostly in your 10th and 11th grade. And then we have 2 special ed students at Southampton. They've been there long before East Hampton opened up their new special ed class from last year. And we have a contract, and we're expecting a 2% increase for next year in tuition. And then I believe, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, next year we have to start negotiating, or do we have one more year left?
I think we have to start negotiating next year.
Start negotiating next year.
Yeah, it ends June 2025, the current contract.
Okay, that's a good point. Christine just brought up a good point. So even though I stated that most of the new entrances were 10th and 11th grade, every single child is entitled to an education until they receive a high school diploma or turn 21 years of age.
Right.
Okay, so you can have super seniors, okay? And that's the other item that we don't know. We have been asking for grades and attendance and keeping track, but, if somebody slacks off the last semester, that could change their graduation rate. Some schools have become very creative and done a summer graduation program to help those graduation rates. Because a lot of our schools are overcrowded on the high school level, especially more towards the city since COVID. So I know that they are looking at creative ways to help students graduate sooner.
So do we know if the high school is having increases in students from the other sending districts as well, or is it just us?
I know that not just the high school, but Waynescott, because they send their children out as early as 3rd grade, they did not budget enough to cover tuition for this year.
Okay.
And I know the first year of COVID, the same thing happened to Amagansett. So even though Springs negotiated for an exclusive with East Hampton to lower our rate, that rate went to any other school that was exclusive. So Waynescott, unfortunately, does give their kids some choices because they're close to Bridgehampton, they're close to Sag Harbor. She didn't get the special rate that we got because they wouldn't commit to one school. So
Also, just to put this out there, East Hampton's considering another capital improvement. Going out probably over $100 million. So That's
Beautiful segue into
into,
my fiscal transparency, Tim, because that tuition rate is based on the fiscal transparency reports. And as much as all of our business officials hate this report, it is exactly doing what the public wanted, and that's transparency. So Springs is very lucky. Our report reflects the one building. The superintendent gets charged to this building. Your principal gets charged to this building. When a district like East Hampton has central office administrators, the business official must take part of each one of their salaries and adjust it to each one of the 3 buildings to come up with that rate, tuition rate per child. Remember that slide? That we're at like 28,000, but Montauk is at 64,000. That comes from this fiscal transparency report. So I want to show you something that's very interesting, and there's Mike and I reviewed this earlier today. So at Springs, this again, point out, the state is always behind. This is 2021 fiscal transparency report. 616 students. This was that September we came back from the pandemic that children were still, quote, missing. Who was still on home instruction? Who is doing these pods at home to instruct their children? Who maybe went to another city or state to take care of elderly grandparents or something like that. So that was 616 students, K-8 here at Springs School. Our per pupil expenditure went up because we knew what was coming the following year. We didn't cut teachers, we didn't cut administrators, okay? In fact, we did a lot of small group instruction that year and small classes because if you remember, we were on a hybrid. So we kept all our staff, and I thank this board for keeping all our hourly employees as well, because they all came back in September. Montauk, on the other hand, their enrollment, on the same hand, they look very similar to us, their enrollment went down also, and their rate went up. Tuckahoe's enrollment went down, and their rate went down. So somewhere along the line, they must have lost a teacher or 2 to make that be very similar. Amagansett got hit hard. They had an increase in their enrollment, but they did not really increase their staff, okay? Because they knew it was kind of be temporary. So their per pupil cost went down significantly, a lot. East Hampton's enrollment went up slightly, not much from last year, and their rate went down a little bit. Hampton Bays, their numbers went up, as well as their per pupil expenditure went up. Not by much, but went up. So the average in New York State is 25,519. You've seen that number before to educate a child in New York State. Next slide, Julie. Important dates. This is where I'm suggesting March 28th. Mike says he'll be ready to go on that date. And then you'll decide. He'll show you all the numbers. This is what this is going to cost. What do you want to keep? What do you not want to keep? And then he'll do a final budget presentation on the 4th with the budget and property tax adoption on April 18th. Budget hearing is May 9th. And annual meeting, budget vote, and trustee election, May 16th. Oh, sorry. I'm already getting ahead of myself. Thank you, Julie. It's 23, not 24. Okay. Questions?
Very well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. So the 28th, we're going to, right, so Tuesday, the 28th, we will put that in there. Okay. So, I mean, this is an interesting way of doing it, because I know last year we came out with a whole big number, and then we had, lots of worry and anxiety going on because of, we started with that budget and we're then cutting out of it. So right now, I mean, not having an idea of the total budget at this point yet, it's I feel like I'd like to know that sooner rather than later, because there's not that much time left. So is there a?
I mean, was it 48?
I mean, I just, is there any way, Mike, that you would have this information before the 28th?
Well, I'll have it ready before, like the Thursday before that meeting for you to see,
Okay.
before you come to the meeting, yeah.
But do you want,
I
you're
think-
looking at it earlier, Barbara?
Well, I think there are a lot of unanswered questions still, Mike, aren't there, as far as the budget's concerned, because of the
Well,
information. you have?
I've got to start analyzing some of the stuff. I've just got some of the final pieces for revenue, which is going to impact the tax levy. So that's one of the reasons I was trying to hold everything off too. But remember, last year, we just kind of did a little bit of a rollover budget. So it was a little bit easier to come out with full numbers up front. We had a lot of delays, like this year, the executive budget didn't come out until like the middle of February. Last year, we had it in the middle of January. So there was a lot of delays. So it made more sense. If you're going to build this budget from the ground up, you have to do it compartmentalized, piece by piece, just so you get a flavor for what the philosophies are of where we're looking to spend extra money. Doesn't mean we're asking you to commit to that tonight. You'll be in a better position when I do the whole thing to really pull it all together and take a look. But this gives you an idea, because then if we have to pull, you should be able to formulate some ideas now. Where are some of the soft spots that you saw in these meetings that you might want to see us cut out if necessary?
I've seen about 4 or 5, actually.
Would it be helpful for Mike to put together all the wants so that you have it ahead of time? The wants with the expense before the 28th, or do you want to look for a meeting before the 28th? I don't know if Mike's going to be ready before the 28th.
Also, I mean, the previous week is a regular board meeting, so that, I mean,
Yeah, I've got a lot to do, Ted.
okay.
No.
I think having a list of the wants and also having a list of the, what was the, Pat, that used the hard cost or the
Fixed cost.
fixed cost, thank you, of stuff that is completely non-negotiable.
Yeah, I think what I might be able to do is identify the items that are things that we have to do to sustain the existing budget monies. And then also identify those things that are going to enhance the budget, which are the wish list items.
Mike, if you could do that over the course of the next week and share it with the board in my absence, I would appreciate that.
I'll do my best.
So we'll keep the 28th? 7 o'clock? Julie, you got that? Yep.
It'll be good to get his information for the next 3 weeks, because then you got a week to push it together. Then you got a week to try to figure it out, right?
Yeah, Christine Sampson texted.
Mike and I will try to shoot for that 16th, that you get something on the 16th from him.
No, you said that Thursday before,
Thursday before the 23rd.
28th.
The 28th.
Right.
28th, right, Mike?
The 20.
Yeah, that's the next meeting, next budget meeting.
He'll have info by the 23rd, which is the Thursday.
This Thursday, okay,
Yeah, okay.
But the week before, we have a regular meeting.
Yes, it is.
And the
Okay.
21st, we have a regular meeting, yes.
Thank you.
But the 23rd is not a meeting, if that's just when we
It's
have.
if we're gonna get the report from Mike.
Right.
Okay.
Because we have no idea how close we are to the cap with fixed costs and everything else before we even get the rest of this.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah. So we're gonna be making some tough decisions, at the end of this whole process. And are you, in your needs list, ranking things?
We can.
I think having a ranking from you guys would be helpful when we go to look at what's.
And it's tough because the needs and, tell correctly, the needs and wants, some things we need, and we can't change it. Because we need to have it, and there's something we want, it's a fine line, right? Is that what the number system's for?
Yeah, but if you remember that,
Wants list, like where's all the wants coming from? Is Christine, like you're working with the teachers and creating a list of wants, or like how did that list kind of compile?
I think it's
itself?
information gathered from public commentary, from the board meetings and from staff and from, and just,
I think-
and the kids.
like in the past already, you can see where the wants are in
Yeah.
this budget. It's because you're looking at these numbers and you're saying, okay, if we get to April and we see that there's depending on what we have to make up, then our job's going to be to say to Mike and administration here, you need to go back and get us closer to those numbers. So they're the ones who are going to be making those cuts, not us. So we're going to say, okay, where do you go look? Where you have to go back to instruction and look. You have to go back to staffing and look. And you have to go back to programs and look. And our decision is whether we can do enough of that to get close, or we may not be able to in a reasonable way. We may have to say, well, we need to ask for more money just because of the cap. But that decision probably won't come until April.
Your cap last year was very high. Mike, what is the cap this year?
It's about almost 2%,
And what was it last year?
5.46.
You're in a much different place.
Right.
We were at the cap last year, but that was a 5% increase.
And keep in mind, even though we might have to pierce this year's cap, it may only be a couple of $100,000. We're still going to be significantly below last year's tax cap and what we levied for this year.
I think that's a critical point for the community to know about as we continue to talk about this, that you keep bringing that up, because I think that's a really critical point, that even if we pierce the cap, it's still going to be less than what we did last year.
Right.
I think that was all planned on Mike did last year, we didn't plan the budget.
Those are those 5-year projections
Yes.
that this Board of Education has asked Mike to do, and he's done it.
Right.
And he will do that again, correct, Mike?
Yeah, yep.
Will that be in budget 4 presentation or the one on the 28th?
I might be able to get it done for the 28th.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
The 28th is budget number 4.
Yes, yep, we're gonna change this, you're right.
Are there any needs or anything that are currently in the budget that we could do additional grant writing for? Is there any?
We continue to look at the greenhouse for grants. There seems to be some money out there. Mike, on your list, I know I'm putting a lot on your list.
My list has a grant accountant position in it.
See,
Mike doesn't like, business
Mike
officials
needs
don't
to-
like
Mike
grant
wants
writing.
Well, the problem with grants is that the uncertainty of it. You can't budget on that idea that you're going to get a grant. Grants help out your budget, like you know, because you've been successful at it. But you can't sit here and say, okay, I'm going to go after these 3 grants to make this budget work. Because it takes, usually you don't get the grant the first time. It's usually the second or third time, and it takes 6 to 8 months to even get to that point.
We do have some grant money left, and, Mike jumping in here has to analyze what's left, and I plan to tell you all, maybe on the April 4th budget meeting, what grants are still open. You still have some ESSA funds. I will describe what we've spent to date and what is left. I know that there is a need out there for the kindergarten playground. We have to, Mike and I have to sit on the UPK grant. That grant works very different than other grants. The allocation is per student. So very similar to that transparency report. You have to take what it costs you to educate the child, which is right now $5,400 to scope. We do have custodial and security in there, but I have to take that cost and divide it among every child. I can't spend over $10,000 per child, or I will not get reimbursed from the state. That includes food, that includes our rent to the SYA, to the East Hampton town. So that's a whole different grant and a different format. I believe in ESSA, Mike and I will be able to show to the board what we have left and some suggestions of one-time expenses to utilize that grant. One of the ESSA grants expires or closes as of September 23. So that's an immediate. Then the next ESSA grant doesn't close until June of 24, so we have some time. But Mike did the softball field with that. We did the risers for the concerts and the play with that. Those are one-time expenses that, yes, you can take it out of the general fund and not have to expense that cost. but you do need to get approval. If there was something in that grant that, like the playground, that's not in the UPK grant, it's not in the ESSA grant, I would have to do an amendment to get the state to approve that expense before we could go out and buy a UPK playground, because it wasn't in any of those grants to start with.
So would greenhouse work or establishing the garden behind that, would any of those be covered by that?
For ESSA funds, Barbara, yes, absolutely, because it's a one-time expense. Not the regular maintenance of the greenhouse, that would have to come out of the general fund. But any upstart costs like the planting boxes in
Right.
the gardens and
Mhm.
anything on the safety front, your radios, okay? Because school safety is huge. Your cybersecurity, I told you that Mike doesn't even have that in this
No.
anywhere. What happened in Suffolk County? Planned for
Wind it down here anyway.
an expense that you put in next year's grant on ESSA side, but it has to be approved from the state first, but then that's an ongoing expense every year. You really need to put that in your budget. You're not gonna fund cybersecurity for just next year and then not the next year. I would recommend that goes into the general fund, and it's a huge expense. It's like 80 somewhere thousand dollars. And the insurance that goes with it. Because it's in the millions when you have a cyber case. And it will cost the district a lot more money if for some reason student or staff data is breached. And I know you're not gonna see it, it's gonna be something we can show off, but I think it's something really important.
Yeah, just ask Suffolk County, they'll tell you.
Are there other stipulations to that ESSA grant in terms of, I'm imagining right now there's a wants and needs list that's ranked, and that it's conceivable that you might have advanced knowledge that your grant money will fund it, but the grant is not available to higher ranked items than lower ranked items, meaning that you might be able to fund a third or fourth level priority because the grant is available for that, but a top level priority might not be under a stipulation of a grant.
Just remember, anything you put on the grant is not guaranteed to be there the next year, especially these two ESSA grants. Title money we get every year. So that's a safe bet, but we still don't count on it because anything can happen in the state. We know that.
Right, so
But
when
the
you're
ESSA
budgeting,
ones-
you're looking at if there is a one-time thing like hardware
Correct.
versus something that's ongoing that has to be in
Correct.
consideration in the budget and the
Yes.
awareness.
That's
of
my
it has to be done.
recommendation. Look, the bottom's gonna drop out on some of these school districts that put a ton of staff on the ESSA grants. Some districts did return full-time, but they opened new buildings and they hired additional staff. I know Shoreham Wading River has a mass exodus, they are, I can't remember the number, but it's a large number of people that are being accessed, but they opened a new building during the pandemic. They had like 10 kids in a classroom, and they can't sustain that. So they're a district that financially is, on the list that they're hurting.
I know it was brought up, Tim did, but can you maybe one more time or just help me understand? I'm trying to clarify the tax cap that was north of 5% last year, and what Mike brought up this year is 2%. So what does that mean in plain terms for this budget?
Mike, you want to take that one? Mike,
I think you're muted, Mike.
you want to put him on the screen, June?
Yeah, last 2 years, our tax cap percent was relatively high because each year we had the new bonds hitting. We kind of did it in a way so that we picked up half of the increase one year and then the rest of it the next year. Now those bonds are fully in the budget to be paid for at roughly $1 million per year for principal and interest on the bonds. So in 2 years, we've increased our debt service portion by over $1 million. That allowed us to reap the benefits of getting higher, their exclusionary items, so that we were able to get a higher tax cap as a result of it. Now that we've leveled off, the tax cap now comes back down closer to the 2% max. We still have a little bit of increases in debt service through all of the bus purchasing that we've been doing ongoing. So that's why we're at about just under 2.2% tax cap for this 23-24 school year coming up. I hope that was clear. Did that answer your question?
It does help. It's kind of goes back almost to the ongoing costs. You know, you're able to elevate that initially, but we're left with
So now it's just sustaining year after year based on actual expenditures.
There was a movement because the tax cap increased to 5% that we would still try to keep it under 2%. And again, we actually worked hard to do that. So we kept it under the 5% and we were trying to keep it even lower, knowing, right, Mike, because
last year we went right to the tax cap, if you recall, it was 5.46%. But prior years we were down like 1.5%. We kept it way down. But it got to a point because of these increases, we just couldn't continue doing that.
So even though we would be at the cap at 2.2% or go over it, Pearson, we would still be below that 5.
I'll have a spreadsheet at the next budget hearing on the tax cap to kind of give you a history, where it was, how it came, and how the calculations move forward.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
So that one payment is now built into the budget, and we don't have that percentage jump that we had for the
Correct.
first 2 years there.
Correct.
Okay,
Softens it.
yeah. Does anybody have any more questions here on the board?
Thank you.
Very clear. Plus, it was nice having them early.
That's our goal, Thursdays.
Yeah.
So, all right, I will open up the floor to public commentary for this, for our budget here. If you would like to come up and ask a question, please come to the podium, state your name and your address, and you will have a limited time if you say something to the board. Any questions right now on the budget? Our district clerk has a timer going.
There we go. A little more efficient here.
Yes.
Yeah, so more of a statement on the needs versus wants part. As a teacher, sorry, Christina Amanda, so exciting to see the possibility of these additional staff. But want to talk about the difference between needs and wants, particularly as it reflects special ed. I know this was discussed at the last meeting, but what looks like additional 2 people is really vital to our forward success in special ed. And the teachers who were tasked this year with moving between 2 classrooms because it was deemed, there's not that many kids, they'll be able to handle it. We've seen that was very complicated, and it's a lot of scheduling and it's a lot of organization. So the fact that the proposal is now has 1 special ed teacher per grade, except for the grade that needed 2, it's going to make a world of difference, and not just for our special education children, but really for all of our children. We know that there are kids coming in with a lot of needs from pre-K. We know that we will have the ability to really better serve our kids, particularly those K-1 kids. So I'm making a plea to say, even if it looks like, there's only a couple of kids that are classified right now, it's just so vitally important that we try and keep a full teacher for each grade. And we're happy that that is being discussed, and we hope that it continues to be looked at as really a need more than a want. Yes.
Thank you very much. And LTV, please let me know if you have somebody calling in at some point. Thank you.
Okay, we have no callers at this time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Casey Deline. I just wanted to say thank you to administration and the board for publishing the hiring timeline, and just really a lot of the things that us parents asked for last board meeting were addressed and put on Parent Square, as well as like your meeting schedule, et cetera. I immediately put in my calendar. So great. I think Parent Square is a great format. A lot of parents are looking at it, and it is a great way to get that information. So thank you so much. We have a lot of momentum from parents to help. Just so you know, we're available, and we've got a lot of different groups that are forming to try and look into some funding, et cetera. So please use this as a resource. I think moving forward, I'm not allowed to address the principal hiring. Can I make a previous question
No,
about that?
we're past that, and actually, and honestly,
Yeah.
you know, we've been kind of loosey-goosey with our public commentary period. And I've received some input from our attorney on this, because really there are certain things that we don't talk about up here.
Right.
So, you know, verbatim, due to state and federal privacy laws, neither the Board of Education nor the superintendent of schools will entertain public comments of a personal, individual student and or personnel concern. So, these matters, we'd ask that you go through the appropriate administrative channels, or you can leave your contact information with the district clerk along with the issue, and you'll have someone get back to you.
Also, this survey is available to you now.
Yeah.
I would
Yes.
encourage you to go and fill out the survey and make your comments.
So there is input, and actually right now we are on public commentary strictly for the budget.
Sure. Just wanted to double check.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. One thing I thought about when we were talking about technology for next year was the Chromebooks that the students have. I know in 2 years, my daughter's had one. Just as we're looking at the budget, I'm sure you are, but those things do tend to go out of, technology expires quickly, so just to make sure we're looking at the computer situation. Thankfully, we don't need them quite as much as we used to during COVID. The 328 review of Mike's numbers, will that be a public budget meeting?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
all
Great,
budget
okay.
workshops are public.
Awesome. And then the 323 release of the information, that's the same. It goes on to a public, like Word docs, and we can review it before the meeting.
No, that's the board members getting information ahead of time. I'm not sure what.
The board
That-
gets the information on Thursdays at their request, and then 48 hours before the meeting, the board agenda is live.
Just some items about that. I think the needs, wants language is a little tricky for parents and teachers who see everything as a need, of course, and certain passionate things. And I know we can't afford all our needs at spring school. So that's, I guess, the question of what needs take priority over other needs. Just as a parent, I know some top needs are safety, our language program, catch up from COVID, the kids being a little behind in reading, and the math numbers, and the special education as well are so important. And then again, in fundraising, as you look at numbers, the PTA has a really strong, robust group of parents right now. So of course, we're willing to look at fundraising with you guys and see how we can help in our own way through our programs. And then grant writing as well. I know working for another nonprofit, personally, a lot of multi-year grants were really obviously amazing to look into as well as far as funding. So those were just some of my notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brittany Ballington. Time.
No, I just wanted to catch your last name. I didn't catch it at the last meeting. You were interested. Ballington?
Yes, I'm interested in expanding funding for spring school, as are many of the parents, including Casey, who just spoke about that. So we already took some action items on the suggestions that you guys gave us. We have a meeting coming up at the end of the month with Brad Leal. So we're really looking forward to being able to express ourselves as parents at the school and hopefully get us some more funding. I know they're in kind of preliminary stages of the budget right now and have a little bit of an idea of like what they want to vote on, but we're hoping that we can persuade them to expand that for us. My question was on grant writing. You talked a lot about it, Deb. I'm curious who leads that at the school, because I really see like I think a lot of us see like grants as kind of the 1 to 2 year solve to expand funds, and then systemic change like 3 to 5 years down the road. So I'm curious, do you lead grant writing or do you have a team? So I wonder if maybe that's a committee where we can get together like a team of parents. I've never written a grant before, but I'm willing to learn. And so maybe we can get together a group of parents to help support that, because there's so much money out there right now that we could take advantage of. And if we only have one person doing grant writing, like we're leaving money on the table. So we got to build out that team around you. So
I'd be happy to meet with the parents, but after the search for principal and assistant principal, that's the best I can do right now. But, just finished a grant for archives, and it might seem trivial, but our records really took a hit during construction. And Barbara actually wanted to know the same thing. How do you write a grant? And the UPK grant, you have to see the manual that now has to be submitted by March 22nd in order to retain that $420,000. Yeah, I asked for an extension. I did. I said, there's just no way. And Tim's shaking his head. So you get money, but you also have to be prepared to provide the information that they want in order to maintain it and prove that you've spent it the way that you've spent it. And the best thing I can tell you is look at the criteria. If it says 41 or more % free and reduced lunch, you can't apply because we don't have that information. Do we meet that? Probably yes. But because we don't have a cafeteria, we don't get the forms filled out in return. So you can't say that. But what I've learned is you need to state the need, not the want. It's more important to explain how Springs is different from anywhere else. And that's how I got the pre-K grant. We were the only school on the East End that was not supporting a 5-hour program. So we went from 23 half-day slots to 54 full-day slots.
So maybe among ourselves as parents, we can kind of nominate if there is somebody who's written grants before, then she can kind of like spearhead, or I'm not, sorry, I don't want to volunteer you. Somebody can spearhead it, and then I'll be like your supporter. And maybe we can just get like an hour of your time the next week or two, and you can share with us like what grants are currently in motion, and then we can start to get scrappy and do some research, and then actually like.
I suggest you start doing some research. I can provide you with some resources.
Great.
And then we can meet in about, 10 days or so.
Okay.
You know, the biggest thing I still think is trying to get those forms filled out at the beginning of the year from every family. Yes.
Okay.
If we could do that, and we would have the evidence that we could use to apply for the grants that we can right now. And that's a task, I think, with parent help that we really, that's a goal we can meet very quickly. We haven't ever been able to do it in the past, but because we don't have a lunch program here, if we could get those forms filled out, again, it's tough because you have to declare your income.
Yeah.
And you have to be very clear about what you make every year in order to qualify for the designation of either free or reduced lunch. But if we get those back from every family, that would be a huge step in the right direction.
I wonder if it would be appropriate to do that by the end of April. Like if we were able to organize
It has to be done at the first of the year.
the first of the year.
I
Okay.
mean, January 1st or 1st of the school year?
First of the school year.
Okay, by July.
We send it out in the summer.
There's a
Right,
window when that has to be turned in.
Do we know what % of those forms need to be filed to complete the requisite? Is
No,
it
it's
60%?
what the information on the form that comes back is what you're looking for.
Right, like how many, so like how many families?
We need 41%.
41% of the families. in this
Families need to
district.
qualify for free and reduced lunch. It's about $51,000 for a family of 4 or less you qualify for free lunch.
So do all the parents in the school need to fill it out, and then they need to see that 41% of parents have that? Or it's just parents who need the help need to fill it out, but we really need all parents to fill it out, is what you're saying?
If every parent fills it out.
Okay, so that's the hurdle there.
Is this something we can utilize Parent Square for? Like, to make like a digital version that people could easily.
I'm sure you could.
maybe if we plead our case that you do this, you help the
I
school.
think if we get enough
You don't,
parents pleading that.
You're not.
Right.
So just having that information, and it's, so even if we don't have the cafeteria, that isn't enough to,
Yes.
just showing the information, even though we're not actually providing a lunch for them still.
Okay.
There's a county level poverty that I use, and it's like 23% for Springs. Just not enough. It's not reported truthfully. That's the problem.
Are there any schools that actually have grant writing committees that you know of?
They hire grant
They
writers.
hired,
Grant writing,
after I left
exactly.
Longwood, true story, after I left Longwood, they hired an assistant superintendent to the superintendent to write grants.
Only always asking for applicants, do you write grants?
Okay.
I will think about it, Mr. Bunting.
Thank you. Good idea.
Would someone else like to come up?
Everyone, how are you? My name's Maria Jimenez,
Okay.
and I'm here. I have a child who's in the first grade, and also a child attending Eleanor Whitmore. My question to you is, for the pre-K, my son will be in pre-K next year. Just looking at your budget numbers, I'm curious where do you get those numbers from and the projections that you have coming in? Because you have kids coming from the country school, Eleanor Whitmore, and then also, I'm just curious where those numbers come from and how you identify how many.
I called all the schools that have pre-K programs, and
Okay.
I found, 3 or 4 kids that are not in our full day program. Remember, you have to be 4 for December.
Okay.
For pre-K,
For pre-K.
5 for kindergarten.
5 for kindergarten, correct. So my question is the numbers that you're allotting for the classroom sizes, the 3, I believe was I don't have it in front of me.
3 for kindergarten?
Yep, 3
Yes.
for kindergarten. So basically you've reached out to all the communities and that's where that number comes from.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just curious, and like to keep the numbers small for early intervention and all of that, that's all being planned for that, correct?
Yes, that's.
Okay.
We did 3 kindergarten classes this year, and there's a TA in every kindergarten room.
Okay, all right. So, and that, I guess that goes along with, that comes back to the need for the special education. And I think my child was in one of the inclusion classes last year, and I thought that it was a wonderful experience for her. And so I do want to reinforce the need for that. And echo what everyone else here has said, is that there really seems to be a need for that. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you very much.
Kind of Megan Payne. I'm also very excited to see the position of possibly full-time Spanish. That's a big thing for me, and any other increase in staff in the building. The .2 mental health position, I was actually just reading in a PTA flyer that the executive budget from the governor added 10 million for the expansion of school-based mental health, and I was wondering if that state aid is already included in the budget, or if we need to apply for it, or if it just simply trickles down.
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
We haven't seen the governor's proposed budget yet.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so yeah, it says in the New York State PTA is saying that there's going to be a $10 million increase for the expansion of school-based mental health. So I tried to read the flyer, the budget myself, but it's a little beyond my scope of math. So I don't know if Mr. Henry can do that.
Mike, is that something you can look into for us?
I'll see what I can find out. I know that the executive budget for schools has already been published, and it's already incorporated in my preliminary numbers that haven't been published yet. But I'll check.
Okay, thank you.
What did I say?
Is there anyone else who would
Well, thank you, though.
would anybody else care to come up and address the board? Okay, thank you very much. All right. Any other questions from the board at this time? Then do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion. Does anybody on TV know, right?
LTV?
You would have told us that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
no callers
sure.
at this time, thanks.
Okay. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you.